Welcome back to Behind the Billionaire, where we dive deep into the lives and backstories of billionaires, from early industrial age monopolists to modern day tech giants, showing the true history of the men and women who shape today's society. How J.P. Morgan flipped the dollar upside down. Human history is replete with stories of kings and queens who exercised an almost divine power over their subjects. The meaning of power has remarkably changed in the modern era. It now pertains to the ability to influence the course of events for better or worse. In this context, few can rival the kind of power held by J.P. Morgan, who single-handedly stopped a national economic crisis. The present-day Wall Street titans and government bailouts pale in comparison to what this man did to avert an economic catastrophe, and that too with just a call. In the 21st century, his name is synonymous with global finance, but his journey was anything but predictable. He was a child of luxury, but his life was far from a bed of roses. He can be regarded as a banking prodigy who suffered from crippling anxiety. All capitalists owe it to this man, the savior of capitalism as we know it today, but he was, at once, skeptical of the very system he had nurtured. Let's go behind the life story of the billionaire, J.P. Morgan. John Pierpont Morgan was born in 1837 in Hartford, Connecticut, into a world where aristocracy and industry held sway. His banking lineage can be traced back to Junius Spencer Morgan, a respected banker, while his mother was a fiercely religious and emotionally distant figure. From a young age, he was impressed upon Pierpont that greatness was his duty, not a choice, but he had his own battles to fight. As a boy, Morgan suffered from mental issues like seizures, depression, compounded by a painful skin disease called rosacea, which worsened with age. He was particularly averse to the camera and thus spotlight. Despite his controlled public image, he was a restless and tormented man behind closed doors. Still, his brilliance shone throughout his academic life, first in Boston, then Switzerland, and finally Germany, giving him mastery over languages, arithmetic, and economics. This broad-based exposure shaped his global view, one that would later help him shape America's place in the financial world. In his 20s, Morgan joined his father's London-based firm, only to return to the U.S. to launch his own J. Pierpont Morgan & Company. While others speculated wildly, Morgan developed a razor-sharp instinct. Don't chase hype. Build empires. He wasn't drawn to short-term trades. He firmly believed the real power came from building a solid structure. This meant taking control of struggling industries, consolidating them, and restoring investor confidence. His signature was stability. By the 1870s, Morgan had become the quiet yet powerful engine behind America's rapidly expanding industrial landscape. He invested his hard-earned money in critical national infrastructure like railroads, supported the burgeoning steel industry, and orchestrated mergers that virtually transformed the country's economic map. But Morgan's goal wasn't just profit. He saw finance as a way to control chaos, a tool to discipline what he viewed as an unstable, over-speculative American system. He didn't want to ride the roller coaster. He wanted to build the track. The year 1895 brought the U.S. government to the brink of bankruptcy. Gold reserves were dwindling, and the country teetered on the edge of collapse. J.P. Morgan stepped in during these desperate times. With no formal role in government, and no privileges like a salary or title, he stepped in when others were vying for financial cover. He, along with the Rothschilds of London, lent the Treasury $65 million in gold, which gave a new life to the U.S. dollar. It wasn't charity, but a sheer display of power exercised with precision. For the first time, Americans realized that Wall Street was not just an entity within America. It could influence Washington and even the rules of the game. Critics decried it as a form of plutocracy, while populists hated the way he came to dominate the system. But Morgan was least bothered. He wasn't trying to win admirers or supporters for his mission. He was like a one-man army whose overarching goal was to keep the system afloat, no matter how rough the economic sea gets. In 1901, J.P. Morgan presided over the biggest corporate merger in history, bringing together Carnegie Steel and several other steel and iron businesses to create U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar firm. It was a financial wonder, built on cigars and handshakes, that went on to capture two-thirds of the steel market. Morgan wasn't merely accumulating riches. He aimed to create economies of scale, reduce transportation and resource costs, and elevate America as an industrial power alongside the UK and Germany. He also sought to dominate transatlantic shipping by financing the formation of a shipping company, International Mercantile Marine Company. As fate would have it, a ship owned by the company's subsidiary sank on its maiden voyage. It was a huge financial disaster, but Morgan was undeterred. Monetary losses amount to nothing in life. It is the loss of life that counts. It is that frightful death. He disliked competition for its own sake, but believed that monopolies could be a lever for creating national efficiency when controlled by responsible men. In Morgan's eyes, America was like a reckless, emotional child, and he was the adult steering it in the right direction. 1907 brought in its wake a severe banking panic that threatened to unravel the entire U.S. economy. Morgan rose to the occasion and came up with an ingenious strategy, placing 100 leading financiers in his library and refusing to let them leave until they all agreed to a rescue operation. He personally arranged the injection of millions to bail out failing banks and institutions. Once again, his strategy worked. The market was back on its feet in an act that seemed no less than a miracle. Morgan had once again redeemed capitalism without any government assistance. Morgan's dominance wasn't just felt in vaults and boardrooms, it echoed through the culture. In a famous political cartoon titled The Helping Hand by Udo Kepler, Uncle Sam rows a boat while J.P. Morgan towers behind him, hand on the oar. The message was unmistakable. Morgan wasn't just supporting the country, he was steering it. It was an uncomfortable truth. One man, unelected and unseen by most Americans, had become more powerful than Washington itself. The Panic of 1907 made one thing clear. Even Morgan couldn't be the nation's financial backstop forever. His actions laid the foundation for something larger, the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. So, what motivated him? Certainly not money. He already had that. Neither was it a desire to build a legacy, as he shunned the limelight, despised interviews, and preferred to work out of the shadows. To be precise, the motivating force behind J.P. Morgan was a desire to master chaos. He was afraid of instability in all forms, including the volatility of financial markets. But most of all, he feared human nature. He viewed panic as a sign of weakness and speculation as a threat. This is what convinced him that only the most powerful minds, his among them, deserve to lead the world as they hold the key to its success. That belief came from his own inner struggles, mainly bouts of anxiety and sickness that plagued him throughout his life. Above all, he felt crushed under the weight of legacy, and finance provided him with what nothing else could: a gateway to the world that listened to him. In a sense, his life was a paradox. He imposed order upon an economy founded upon the notion of a free market. To some, he was a despot. To others, a messiah. Neither praise nor critique could prevent him from thinking that he knew what was best for the system, and the results spoke for themselves. J.P. Morgan passed away in 1913. His inheritance wasn't as staggering as that of the super-rich industrialists. This reinforces that he wasn't in it for making money, but for an enduring impact. And that's what makes him such a formidable presence in American political and financial history. He didn't create new goods, nor did he build magnificent factories. His lasting achievement lay in how he molded the financial veins of a whole nation and educated America how to think big and build better while planning for impending storms. His legacy lives on in a bank that lies at the forefront of the contemporary financial landscape, J.P. Morgan Chase. But perhaps the true legacy of Pierpont Morgan isn't a corporation, but a question that's as relevant today as in Morgan's time. In a market-dominated world, who do we trust to hold the reins?